And welcome to Beck's Bug Out Survivor. On this episode we're going to look at how Americans and Europeans trek so differently in the way they pack than someone from Britain. But many years ago I switched to packing my RUCK just like the Europeans and the Americans that I have met over the years. Now, I'm not saying one way is right and the other is wrong. I'm going to say it's personal choice, and whatever works for you works for you. But it will cost you nothing to find out whether you have a preference for something else other than you already know up here. So I'm going to get into my pack to start unloading. If I did want to get into the pack, say to slip a jacket on, I do have to undo the top of the pack and remove the tent. Another weird thing that Brits do is keep kit on the top. You can keep kit on the top, just make sure it's the right kit. So this is going to be a Brit stripping down his pack and putting it back to the way I usually do it, which is more like our friends across the pond there and Europeans. I've seen Germans do this, French trekkers, especially Thru Hikers in the US. I'm going to show you how I dropped nearly all my stuff sacks, including the one for this tent. There's nothing wrong, by the way, with how the Brits pack. It's just inefficient and unnecessary, and has become embedded in people's psyches that is the only way to do it, and it's just not. So I'm going to show you methods and you can decide if it's right for you or not. It costs you nothing finding out. My tent, that is not the best tent in the world by far, but I am in the process of saving up for something else. I'm usually a hammock camper, so I don't invest too much money into tents, but there is a pretty good one on the market, lightweight and affordable. This is my Thermarest air pad. It's the X-Therm. It is very, very warm. It includes a pump sack to blow it up with. Again, if foam is your thing, put a foam roll in and just stop crying what other people are using. On the mat so far is my tent, something to sleep in. And then I have my pad, something to sleep on. There is a logic to how I've packed it as well, but that could almost be an entire video of its own. This is pretty much on the top. It's a canoeing dry sack. It's 3 litres. It's nice, it's bright. I can see it. I don't want to hide it. In here is my entire cook system. A pot to cook with. And then a stove to heat the food. And then the fuel for that stove. Also in here are things like a spoon or eating utensils and the food. That's about 24 hours, by the way. So we can separate them. My cook set. And you'll notice at the moment everything is in stuff sacks. Some things will be kept in the stuff sacks, others won't. Bag of clothing. I don't need the bag for the clothing, although it's bloody handy just to keep things separate. Waterproofing is another thing, another issue I had. I need to waterproof this pack. I just had an assumption that this particular pack was waterproof. Went out in monsoon conditions, found out it wasn't. So pack liners, always keep yourself a good pack liner. Right down the bottom is your sleeping bag. This just happens to be the Graham Expert top quilt. I'm going to separate the IOU, something to sleep in, under and on, and then the other components, and you see I have very little. Far too many people I've seen on YouTube videos put far too much emphasis on their Diddy bag. Diddy is your incidentals or sundries kit. It's chops and changes every camp really, but the components don't, just the container I put it in. This is a pencil case. It's that kind of size, fits on the palm of my hand. In here I have a means like a repair kit. I also have torches, batteries, a wash kit, all my incidentals, and it has to fit in something like that. I've seen people take this up to 3 kilos in itself. There's no requirement at all to have 3 kilos of incidentals. It's madness. Like I said, I have everything I need here. I've thought it all through. I need illumination. I need to brush my teeth in the morning, spare batteries. But whatever it is, get yourself a little pencil case and then work on your incidentals, how small you can make it. I have room to spare in there. On the front of the pack, I have waterproofs. It's not all here. Little waterproof jacket. Whatever clothing I'm wearing, I need to keep dry. Wet clothes equals cold clothes. Simple as. Keep anything you can as dry as you can. And that's pretty much me done. I'm just going to undo the first aid. And remember, it is a first aid, not a trauma pack. And this was filled with components taken from flight, a doctor who was also a trekker. And I saw the logic of how he was doing it and put it in there. Most people will insist that's not enough. I need a tourniquet. I don't know anyone in the trekking world who puts tourniquet or tourniquet, as you call them in the States. But we choose the French pronunciation because it's a French word, tourniquet. But I don't know anyone who puts tourniquet in a first aid pack for trekking. I'm going to ask myself, what is the likelihood of me stepping on an IED while I'm trekking and blowing my leg off? The likelihood of that is, it's not likely at all. So I'm not going to address that. But you can put what you want in yours. I have things in here which are more akin to the kind of incidents that are going to occur for a trekker. Blisters, twisted ankles, sickness. That is how I've addressed mine. You can do it however the hell you want. Tourniquets or Rayleigh bandages are things for soldiers. If you're worried about blowing your leg off while you're trekking, put them in. Right, I've got everything pretty much laid out, and I'm going to separate it into the top 3, the big 3 as I call them, things you were definitely going to need, and everything else I could pretty much leave behind. But I do want a change of clothes, I do want a stove, I do want my incidentals pack. So let's just lay it all out. I can get rid of this. I'm just going to take out my mapping gear because it doesn't take up much room. There it is, my mapping gear. I may as well throw that into the mix. Now I've separated everything, I need to get rid of some stuff sacks. I'm going to get rid of the stuff sacks with the top quilt, the tent and the pad. I'm happy with this section here, which is the catering, navigation, incidentals and first aid. And I can even lose the stuff sack for the clothing. First of all, I need some kind of pack liner. I'm using a plastic bag, lined pack. I want everything waterproof. I want to take the clothing and separate this into 2 different parts. What I'll be sleeping in, which can go down the bottom, and what I'll need quick access to, which can go to the top. I've opened it up. Let's have a look what I've got in here. The jacket's put on if I stop to make a brew. So a jacket is going to want to be something to keep at the top. Okay, I have a t-shirt there. I generally only change that once I've been sweating out, which is generally when I get to camp. Same thing for socks, t-shirt and a fleece. I also sleep in if it's a bit chilly. I don't have a shell on the fleece ever. I learnt my lesson there. So things that I need very last will be things I'm going to put on for bed. I'm not going to need instant access to them. I can put that straight in. And yes, I've lost a stuff sack for it already. That's gone. The socks. And you notice not everything's going in particularly neat. The t-shirt. And that's pretty much the clothing for the bottom there. Yep. Now then, I've got to remember how I'm doing this. Oh wow, just pulled the toddle straight off that. Put that in my pocket, don't want to lose it. This is my AirPad thermarest, which comes with the pump. I don't need this sack. But mine is now this shape. This shape happens to be the same shape as my pack, including the sack for it. So I don't roll it in a special way. I just get the air out and put it into a square or a rectangle, whatever suits you, and just slot that down. Actually, I'm going to put it in by its maximum length here. There you go. Not even in a cylinder shape. I hate that as well. The sleeping bag next, which is going on top of my night clothes. I could even put the night clothes inside the sleeping bag if I wanted. Get rid of this stuff sack. Don't need it. There is a perplexity for Brits to put stuff sacks inside stuff sacks. Even if a torch came with a stuff sack, they will not leave it at home. So they feel the need to bring it. But here you go. My top quilt is going on top of my night clothing. There's that pad. And note how it's not in a cylinder shape. I've just put it in loose against the back. If you're watching this from across the pond, you'll be wondering what the big deal is. And to be quite honest, I'm with you on that. There is no big deal. It's just Brits don't do it like this. Finally, a cook system, which is all the brew kit, 24 hours of food, the stove, everything I'm going to need. I'm not going to show you inside this, but if you remember, you'll get to see behind the scenes on a lot of kit. But whether you use gas, whether you use a wood burning stove, whether you use liquid alcohol, they're your choices. I don't care what pot you use. I've settled for a size of pot that I'm happy with, and I've given the rationale behind why the size of pot, stove and fuel in other videos. That's going in the pack. We're coming up to the top of the pack where I can have access to this. There's the handle. And yes, I could squash everything down. Hell, I'm not going to. I don't need to. Theoretically, I could even get a smaller pack and keep the stuff sacks and get everything small on my back. Small. I don't see the logic to that at all. Why? What does it achieve? A smaller pack. This pack here weighs 1.1 kilos empty. I can carry that. Stove kit in. If I've stopped for a brew, I might want to put a jacket on. Here's my jacket going right in at the top, and that's the main body full. In there, hat, gloves in the pockets, and a jacket, because when you stop, you start cooling. I can get my plastic bag, give it a little twist, tuck it down. Everything is waterproof. And look at the additional room I still have. I was saying about how I don't squash everything down. There's no need. I like a uniform amount of space and weight between the bottom, the middle and the top. If I start squashing down, I'm going to have a lot of weight at the bottom. Instead, I kind of keep it as loose as I can. This brings us to the back of the pack with this stretch mesh here. I'm going to take full advantage of that stretch mesh and take my tent out of its stuff sack. A lot of Brits won't do this. A lot of Brits won't even see the logic of doing this, but get rid of this and use that back mesh. Also, that needs to go in, which is my rain jacket. Basically, this is the thinking. Anything you want to keep dry, put on the inside of your pack. Anything that is wet or likely to be wet or going to get wet, outside. So let's get that rain jacket, just shove that in. There can't be any damp transference either, because everything is waterproofed. I'm going to take out the pegs there for my tent. The tent I tend to just fold in half, so the bottom always stays together like that, mud on mud, in other words. This is a fantastic way. So now I've loose filled the tent into the stretch mesh. Just give it a squash down. Got the pegs, they're there as well. Let's have a look at the logic of what I was saying. Let's take this as an example. Sleeping bag, stuff sack. Look at it. It's a stuff sack. A sack that you stuff your kit into. Think of this. If only this had shoulder straps, then I could stuff into my stuff sack and put it straight on my back. But it wouldn't be big enough to incorporate my other kit. What if this stuff sack was bigger? Had shoulder straps? Yeah, I could get everything in. What if this stuff sack had shoulder straps and a hip belt and a mesh on the front? Then I could put my tent in. What I'm talking about here is my pack. So far, I've lost the sleeping bag stuff sack, the tent stuff sack, the AirPad stuff sack, and even the stuff sack for my clothing. Just get rid of them a minute. Incidentals kit here is my illumination, my ablutions, spare batteries, everything I need without going overboard. If you are a member, you'll already know what's in here. But again, if you want to go overboard and put kilos and kilos and kilos of batteries in and everything, fine, go ahead, do it. I do have spare batteries in here. I have enough. If I'm only out for 24 hours, I'm not going to put myself a month's worth in here, is what I'm saying. I put 24 hours batteries, which is just 2 batteries. I don't need a huge wash kit. Not many trekkers will even have a wash, but I do. So yeah, I've got a tiny bit of soap, liquid soap, and I do soap up pits and bits. They stink, and I don't like it. If you want to go on a stinky hike and have sweat rashes, you go ahead, because the weight of the soap there must be 3 grams. I've seen so many people argue the point, and I mean the amount of soap I have is a specimen jar from a doctor's with dish soap in. It weighs nothing. But if you want to not have the ability to wash sweat rashes, smelly dirty, that's up to you. Now I know that you're a smelly dirty person. I won't be hiking with you. Mapping gear down the other side of my pack. Like I said, I do have mapping cases that go around my neck, but basically that section there will cover on just one side of the map about, I think, 6 kilometres. So by the time I've walked 6 kilometres, I can turn the map over. I can cover 12 kilometres in that day there, or that afternoon. Just need to put on my first aid pack, and it is first aid, not a trauma. So just clip that onto the side of my pack. The rationale behind why I keep mine visible on the side there, like that. If I get knocked unconscious, a dog walker or another trekker finds me, they might not have the inclination to look for a first aid pack in my pack. However, if they see one on the side, they will have the inclination to have a little eyeball what's inside. They might only need something to stop the bleeding, like a swab and some sticky stitches, and that's all they need. And I've only addressed that first aid to cover the likelihood of the things I think I might need, such as twisted ankle, blisters, diuretics, medicines, things like that. Another thing I don't do with my first aid pack is put things that are not akin to first aid in it. And that's where I keep things like that. And the single wipes in the sachet. I don't even have to take the pack off to break open a mosquito wipe repellent, wipe it on. Also in here, lip balm, tiny knife. I have another on the other side. Same idea. Soap, toilet tissue. I've seen too many people keep their toilet tissue in the first aid, but then they put the first aid pack in the pack, preferably buried to fill space somewhere. So now you've got the tom tits, the squits. You've hardly got your panties down to your knees. Bang, there. But I don't have to root in the pack. It's on my hips here, you know, wipes, hand sanitizer, that is all I use, because I much prefer the French bidet wash than a wipe. Okay, you don't have to. I just think it's a lot cleaner. After all, if you are going to wash your car, would you do it with paper towels? Or do you use soap and water to get a muddy car clean? And of course, I understand that is not for everyone. If you are a Brit or a novice, perhaps you can give it a go. It will cost you nothing to find out if you have a preference for it or not. And you can always revert back to type if you don't like it. I'm going to say you've lost nothing finding out. Remember what I said about keeping some parts of this first aid kit separate, like insect repellents and things like that. Don't keep them in there. If you have a pocket on the hip belt on your pack, use it, put them in there. But I never tell you what to do. I only show you what I do, and you can see if you want to follow suit. I never talk down to you as a viewer like you're 6 years old saying you're doing it wrong, which I see a lot of other channels do, and it's bloody annoying. It's not up to somebody else to tell me whether I'm right or wrong. It's a preference. What I'm doing is showing you my preference. So until next time, take care of yourself, and I will see you out there. Happy trails.